The scene is set within Paragon Odyssey 15. Within one of the office rooms, the Prince of the City sits. A piece of paper and exquisite silver fountain pen poised over his hand. The pen hovers there for a moment, no longer, or not putting tip to paper. He seems to be in deep concentration when his retainer, Alfred, enters the room, saying that the Senchar, Mr. Brodienus, has arrived in the theatre complex. John wipes the blood sweat from his brow and pushes the paper aside, glad for the distraction to put off the inevitable, at least for a little while.
Ramsay comes plodding in his normal walking without bouncing style, almost gliding if you couldn't see his legs. He is standing in front of the door for a moment, perusing his data tablet. He seems to be reading up on something, but he then slips it into one of his pockets and knocks on the door. I'm assuming the ghoul will open it for him, leaving him standing there. He kind of glances at the ghoul for the briefest of moments, just because he's directly in front of him. And when he gets out of the way, he sees Stanhope sitting there, and he gives a bow and walks into the room, making his way towards the usual sort of chair to your right.
Welcome, Senchar. Please take a seat. I'm sure there is much to discuss this evening.
Ramsay smiles, thinly as always, regarding you. His eyes almost never change. They sort of remain the same, no matter what he's doing with his face. But he sort of and sits down very gently in the chair as usual, and goes through the very particular process of unfolding his things in front of him. He's quite expert at it. It doesn't take him very long. Eventually he slides his data tablet into the centre place, tapping a button on it to sort of close the files so that it's ready for whatever purposes he has for it. And he sits perched in his chair. Yes, much to discuss, I would think.
The Prince waits patiently for Ramsay's little routine, already used to the gentleman's tics and quirks. He wistfully stares out the window into the night line of the city. So, tell me, what are the rumblings of the lower caste in these nights?
Rumblings is accurate, I would say. Rumbling, I endeavour to locate the source of this rumbling.
I got your video message, very disturbing. It's incredible how quickly the gossip train goes, and how unsubtle members of the Primogen Council and their representatives are. It's exceedingly disappointing that as soon as plans are made, everyone knows them, and it ruins any form of planning. This is indeed a very unique city, where we can't get Primogen to take power for themselves, and we can't entice the elders of our city to gain more power.
Gaining more power is, well, certainly a fine pursuit for some. It is a favourite pastime of mine. However, some do seem to lack the vision as to how best to proceed. I believe there is a strange malaise in the minds of some of these people, almost like they have regressed in age. They want instant results. They want total control in a night, not prepared to wait and watch a plan grow and come to fruition. While instant results are excellent, of course, it cannot always be relied upon, particularly when pursuing great power. But with such panic, panic on the streets, I felt it was my place to attempt to persuade them to stop their petty bickering. Apprentice Smith tells me that the Harpies and their meeting have become a den of hyperbole and overreaction. I have asked him to do what he can to stem the tide.
Just so. Any advantage we had against these rebellious insubordinates has now been lost. Due to the actions of sympathizers. There are too many sympathizers within our court. And it seems, as per the Primogen's directive, that too many short-sighted kindred lie within our city, unable to see fangs and plotting. Never mind. I understand you were against the treaty? You're speechless, I see. Well. Unless he's doing an amazing statue impression, we will wait for Mr. Boak to return. John looks out the skylight into his city, repulsed at the lack of control. Perhaps, he muses, it was not the fault of Wolf or Lysander, or any of the previous princes that nothing ever changed for the better, but the fault of the short-sighted backward kindred that inhabit it. So marred in their ways, so resistant to change, that they would cut off their own nose to spite their face. Right, we returned?
Looks like it.
Okay, when did you cut off?
Well, you were giving me a sodden, dirty look and talking about sympathisers, going, oh, I don't know what the fuck he means it. Look at his face. Too many sympathisers was the last thing I heard.
Alright. I believe you are against the treaty, Mr. Brodianus.
It is nice to see you fully justified in your beliefs, my prince.
Is there a reason why Clan Tremere was so against a way of defanging the Anarchs? I did not think you were so short-sighted.
I fail to see how giving them an awful lot of territory and more rights within the traditions than any Camarilla clan in the city defines them. In fact, I dare say it would have been license for many more to descend upon us, and indeed for them to want more, and more, and more.
Exactly. You tie them into their own greed. You create a division between their young and their old. The old that want more power and want to keep the power that they have already gained, and the young who want revolution and to be free of their chains. You allow them to kill each other off, and to take away a useful pawn of the Giovanni, which they have used with striking skill to harm us again and again and again. You are new to this city, Mr. Brodianis, so you are not aware of the history of the Anarchs. You were not here when Wolf attempted to rid them of our city, and the fact that Nathaniel Richards, their previous leader, faked his own death no less than 4 times.
Quite a skill, I would imagine.
Well, apparently due to the video footage I was privy to see, he was in the room of every primogen and elder within the city, and he was allowed to walk free. Threw himself out of the window and escaped death again and again. The Anarchs are tenacious. There will always be Anarchs in our city. The treaty meant that they would be de facto Camarilla, obeying all of the traditions, not just one. And an area of our city which no one has taken interest in would be protected from the Sabbat. But alas.
Does the sheriff not take an interest in that part of town?
You would have to ask him.
I did.
The Anarch Gangrel War came out in a stalemate, and there are no Gangrel in the projects. In fact, it is a gaping weakness in the armour of our city. When the Sabbat come, who do they recruit first?
Generally speaking, I would say people in hospital and the poor.
When it comes to recruitment within the kindred population, they always strike the Anarchs first. They're easiest to infiltrate and easiest to subvert. Which is why I need control of this city. We've already found one Anarch informant, not Anarch, Sabbat informant within our midst. How many more lie hidden?
Indeed. Is it your intention to form some sort of inquisition?
A capital idea. We have no fist of the Camarilla. The sheriff is lackadaisical. He sits in his park and he does very little. Only his age denotes his status, and his power is that of fear. But do people follow it? Does he have any hounds to set out his will and be his eyes and ears? You would have to tell me. I haven't heard anything.
He did ask. No. No, I fail to remember. Some dregs we encountered in one of my reports had been approached regarding the position of Hound, but Cole does seem to be rather a lone wolf, if you'll pardon the expression. However, he was rather precious about the project being given away. Perhaps this history you speak of, but from his understanding it seems somewhat different. Nevertheless, from what I saw of the terms, I did not see anything which would have prompted the Anarchs to kill each other. And for all there are, what, 2 of them, 3 of them? I can't say I fear them greatly.
Do not let their foolish demeanour blind you. Many of them are fools and despots, but they're fools and despots that can be called to banner very quickly. Mr. Walsh is a opponent one should not underestimate. He is old and has distinct lineage. And if rumors are to be correct, and my intel, has great influence in various political machinations. He's much more powerful than people give him credit for.
I'm sure he is. Ramsay seems unconvinced.
But that is by to by, Mr. Brody Innes. It was an idea, nothing more. We must think of where we should go from here. So, I am up to suggestions.
It would seem to me that these sympathizers you spoke of are the first immediate threat. Whether or not the Sabbat do or do not return in short order, it would not do for them to come across a disunited populace. A period of calm is essential in any new leadership, and we have yet to have that.
True. And with the problem of the Elder Artemis watching over us, and myself having to call in the Justicars to mediate on this, as is per my duty, we need to show a united city, one that is functioning and capable of handling itself, which we are in a weakened state to do.
Ramsay's eyes flash up when you say the word Justicar. He looks at you directly. You're bringing a Justicar here. Then may I suggest we limit their exposure to some of the people in the city. It would not do for them to be running their mouth with talk of anarch sympathy and what have you.
Of course. Their movements will be watched carefully, and other kindred, if they know what's good for them, will run for their havens when a Justicar is here, if they believe that the situation denotes their very presence, or whether they will send Archons. It is not my place to decide, nor my place to govern what they will do. But this Elder Malkavian is a problem that needs to be addressed by the higher-ups.
Indeed, yes, it would be best if Haikal was not our only link to this thing.
Well, needs must, unless you can offer me another solution, Mr. Brody Innes.
Unfortunately, Haikal seems to have almost bent the knee in worship at a child's feet. And yet, for all his posturing and his sermonizing, I believe that he does at heart have the best interests of the city and peace. And peace is what we need. I believe it is high time he was used to full effect. He may be an anarch sympathizer, but he is an anarch sympathizer with sway. If he can convince people to calm down and begin putting out a message of hope and joy and comfort and yes, whatever, freedom. Yes. The treaties will be honoured. The Convention of Thorns will be respected. The Camarilla's laws will be followed. That must be our watchword. If we do not honour the law, no one else will.
True. The matter of the mayoral election has me a little concerned, Mr. Brody Innes.
Ah, yes. I must bring to your attention that our apprentice Vestus was, shall we say, subjected to certain punishments by the Regent for a recent minor transgression in terms of the masquerade. He did not. It was not an outright breach, but to have his name and likeness printed in a newspaper, a rookie mistake. We have chastised him greatly on this, and we will seek to rectify the situation. I am myself a political, well, savant of some distinction. I will do what I can to guide his efforts.
I read the newspapers. It appears that our guests, the Giovanni, have two candidates in the running. It does not take a genius to figure which one they are backing. And under Mr. Rothstein's own words, he chose his predecessor. They have two candidates for mayor. They are putting their grubby little fingers where it does not belong in City Hall.
The incumbent is Rothstein's toy, then, I presume.
Indeed. By his own words, at least. The truth of the matter has not been verified, but he is a man of arrogance and posturing. I doubt he would say such things if they were not the case.
Rhodes appears to be on the way out, but one never knows how these things can swing. Their other candidate, I'm assuming, is the much-mentioned Mr. Casarino.
Yes, a rather blatant move by them. I'm expecting them a more subtlety, lest they have another in their pocket. But even then, it shows great weakness to the Camarilla if we cannot control this election, that the Giovanni once again gain power in City Hall while we sit back and do nothing. I don't like getting into fights I cannot win, Mr. Brodianus. And although I prefer to gain influence with those that do not change when these petty democratic elections happen, the viewpoints of the neonates will show the strength of the Giovanni and the weakness of the Camarilla if we are to lose.
What then would be your directive in this matter? Who would you back?
I believe Mr. Brehon and Mr. Vestas' coterie is forwarding this Perkins, I believe, some lawyer of some kind.
Yes. She does seem to be popular, and a Democrat, of course, popular in this part of the world. The only issue I have is they seem to have used a very odd vehicle to back her, a lobbying group which they've set up by the name of American Workers, or American Work for American Workers, or something typically racist like that. I'm very surprised Perkins even allowed a name like that to be on her campaign donors list. According to Apprentice Vestas, their stated aims are borderline anti-immigrant. In this part of the world, that may be anathema. They must be very careful with how they present their case.
The foolishness of younglings.
Yes. Would you like me to take charge of this enterprise, or will I simply instruct Apprentice Vestas?
I believe it is best to let the young ones stretch their wings in this particular matter. But I would like you...
Because I'd be campaigning against myself. What are you doing? Sorry.
But even if the mayoral election does not go in our favour, I would like yourself and your minions to start working on other areas of politics. Let the Giovanni perhaps win the mayoral election, but we cannot lose completely. I want the departments, the places that they cannot see, to be under our sway. They may control the figurehead, but we control the people who do the actual work.
Are you familiar with an apprentice by the name of Pirosh Vilmos?
No.
He is new in this city. If he has not presented himself, I will encourage him to do so forthwith, or in fact, drag him to an Elysium at some point. Well, he has recently began work on the Department of Education, and his reports on the subject have been, unlike Apprentice Vestus's and Mr. Brehon's interesting efforts, most sterling. I would commend him on this. He seems to have preempted your wishes somewhat.
Ah, Mr. Red. No, I did meet with the gentleman. I put him to the task of the Department of Education. It is good that at least one kindred in the city can deal with things without having their hand held.
Yes, he is perhaps distant and logical and not prone to overreaction, perhaps exactly what we need right now. A man who sticks to the task and remains unperturbed by the madness around him. I believe he is a sterling choice. Perhaps he could assist in directing some other efforts also, but for now I will inform him to carry on.
This blatant maneuvering by the Giovanni has me worried, Mr. Brodianus. With the promise enacted, I thought they would back off from their blatant grabbing of the city, but it seems that this has only fueled their further. How would you advise us to proceed? I do not like the idea of this becoming another Boston.
Has there been any word from them? Or have they fallen silent?
Mr. Dunstan contacted me a little while ago, wishing for cooperation in business ties, at least on the higher echelons. I saw no problem with agreeing to it, but I made it very clear that this is a Camarilla city, and that, although I see no problem with cooperation for mutual benefit, the public perception, of course, must be that they are guests in our city. Something that he has not taken to heart.
And we are certain they are actively attempting to control the mayor.
It is what they have done in the past, and given the fact that the Ivy League Golf Club and Synergy have all backed their particular candidate, it is without question. Whether this is Mr. Dunstan's work or the Don Milliner, I have no idea, but they are making moves. They are overstepping their promise. The promise says businesses. It does not say influence. This is not their city, Mr. Brodianus. This is my city, and I do not like to give away power.
Of course. Perhaps there is a way we can ride the wave of their success.
Really? How so?
Unless they have this gentleman directly under their control, we need to find out more about who he intends to appoint, what his policies are. It could be that him ascending could be worked to our advantage, as you say, if he is merely the puppet master of puppets which we have designed.
Yes. Very good.
Failing that, I would simply say we must find some way to throw either a spanner in the works of this gentleman's campaign or throw further weight behind Perkins, but it will be very difficult to directly influence their campaign strategies unless we have someone inside the actual campaign.
Just do you believe you can gather up a task force from your numerous wards to be able to attempt this, or is this something we should do directly?
I'm certain I could gather up half of the city, but what I would instruct them to do is another matter. These things have to be carefully thought through. Politics is not a boxing match, it is chess. It is a long game of move and counter move. Hmm. Many of these things are too hasty, too unplanned. I will think on this and will present you with a full report by the weekend regarding my recommendations in terms of two separate agendas. One where we back the apparent Giovanni candidate in lieu of subverting areas of his own influence. The other, my best appraisal on how to get Miss Perkins into power.
Excellent. Have a strategy written up for me with your. I suspect it will make excellent reading, Mr. Brodianus, and we shall implement it. I do abhor American politics. I find them all so very garish. No class, no sophistication. It's just money and posturing.
Yes. It is different from the game of diplomacy. Diplomacy is where the real talk happens. Politics is a shop floor.
Well, I believe I'll leave that at your capable hands. Another issue I would like to put towards you is the fact that your clan has still not paid their tithe. And the fact that a new Elysium is coming up in only a few days. If this continues, Mr. Brodius, I will be forced to put your clan down in the city's standing due to their lack of cooperation with my edicts.
Yes, I will speak to the Regent. I'm not certain precisely what it is he intends to offer. But we shall see. I'm certain it will be taken care of.
Good. I have given you quite a lot of leash on this, Mr. Brodianus, because I know the Tremere support my praxis and support the Camarilla's strength. But the other clans will start to whisper and ask questions if I do not act. If by this Elysium they are still seen to not pay a tithe.
The other clans, those would be the Anarch sympathizers, correct?
Some of them. Do not confuse Mr. Crown's vote for his intentions. He does what I wish him to.
Is that
And
so?
and if you call me a sympathizer, I might just stake you right now.
I'm sure you might. Well, as I said, I will speak with the Regent. I'm certain he will come up with something. He's a very resourceful gentleman.
Excellent. Your idea of an inquisition certainly does pique my interest. It is something I've wanted for quite some time. Alas, there are a few in the city I can consider loyal enough for such a position. I have 3 candidates that I would like to put forward. Is there anyone within your own ranks or wards that you would suggest that are utterly loyal to yourself and me, or above anything else?
I would suggest that all of the Tremere are utterly loyal. The Bruja Chloe brothers has a good relationship with me. Ramsay smiles with half of his face as he says her name. The Nosferatu's Jebediah Stitches could possibly be counted on, but the Nosferatu are notoriously duplicitous. You seem to have a solid backing, as you say, in Mr. Crown. I believe the format of an Inquisition should certainly be beyond the public's scope. I understand Cole could be recruited to such a thing, possibly in terms of a snatch and grab operation. It would then be a simple matter of questioning and testing people he captured and ensuring they did not remember just who and where the questioning took place.
It is my intention to create this coterie that will act as inquisitors and scourges. We need people who are utterly loyal to ourselves and ourselves alone, able to do some of the dirty things that perhaps the court needs without it being public knowledge. Only answerable to yourself or me. Understand?
If it is simply a matter of being able to incapacitate and thoroughly question people in my own clan, maybe the way forward. We have ways. He doesn't go any further than that.
Don't we all, Mr. Bradianus? Don't we all? But if you have anyone who fits the bill, then have them see me. I will gather this little task force in case I need quiet work done. Especially with the Justicar, we might need to silence a few of those loud voices.
Indeed. If you have anyone in mind in particular, there are ways I can strengthen their loyalty.
He leans over, a little bit of a sardonic smile. Ways, Mr. Brodianus? Are you suggesting the Tremere have ways more capable than the Ventrue in controlling people?
I'm not talking about controlling people, my prince. I'm talking about ensuring their loyalty.
Anything you would care to explain, or are you enjoying the mystery behind your words?
I'm afraid the Regent would be quite perturbed were I to divulge clan secrets, even to yourself. But, needless to say, it would be quite a simple matter, and quite, with the proper application, undetectable and would never even possibly be noticed.
Forgive my paranoia, Mr. Brodianus, but how can I be certain that they will be loyal to the city and its court, or loyal to Clan Tremere?
Well, it depends on how you view Clan Tremere, of course.
Touché. Something to be considered.
Yes, as I said, these things are not a boxing match. We do not need to land the knockout blow in one swing.
True, but I do like to have my pieces on the board rather than in the carry case. At the moment I have 3 candidates I think that would fit the bill. A Carl Voltaire, a Juan Carlos. With his recent flogging, he'll be desperate to regain his honor, and has a predilection for killing kindred. And Miss Tavalaris has always enjoyed more violent aspects. He's always been a loyal supporter.
Tavalaris, the Toreador.
Indeed. 2 Toreador and a Nosferatu so far. It would help if we had more members of the clans. I would ask Mr. Crown, but his duties of Primogen must precede anything we ask him for in the court.
I have an interesting notion, or I perhaps think you may find it interesting. Sympathy and such disloyalty are often spread to those seen as the weakest link. It may be wise to consider, particularly in the case of the Toreador, that if they are to appear to others to be approachable, friendly and receptive to ulterior notions rather than your own, it may be that people begin approaching them with such sympathies, and they can be discreetly persuaded against them.
That would be a fine suggestion if Mr. Crowley wasn't a supporter of Lysander and a egotistical despot.
Yes, but I believe that he can be brought to bear, in a manner of speaking. But even if he cannot, this Miss Tavelaris may be the one, if Kindred feels she is approachable. Unfortunately, that is one area where my clan lacks the needed demeanour, shall we say. I don't believe there are many who would openly confess treason to a member of Clan Tremere. A Toreador, however, a Brujah, perhaps Miss Brothers might be receptive to such messages. She is young, she is new, she is Brujah, she is close to some of the Anarchs, and she is quite out with any direct link to either of us. If she begins to simply harvest the information, she has proven herself to be most adept at gathering rumours. That could be an interesting first line of defence.
We also have a Mr. Chambers under the employ of Tracius Cole, who is our sleeper agent within the Anarchs. But you would have to speak to him over his particular uses. I've left it to Cole to hire his own men.
Chambers, I do not believe I've met the man. Is he also Gangrel?
No, a Brujah of odd temperament.
Aren't they all?
Isn't that the case? I apologise,
I will-
Mr. Brodianus, but unfortunately the night grows on and I do not have time to wax and wane. Small matter though, has my commission been completed?
I am on the final stages of the ritual.
Good. Will you be attending the Nosferatu Elysium on Friday?
I do not believe I will be able to, but I will present the item to another who will subtly give it to you. I would not want to do so in front of the entire court with all eyes on him.
Precisely. A secret weapon is useless when it is not secret.
Yes, and it is often best when you produce this particular artifact to, or rather pleasurable to watch the look of surprise on their face as it bounds towards them.
Excellent. Once again, I am encouraged by your intelligence and your ability to see through problems, Mr. Brodianus. No doubt has ever entered my mind that you are not the perfect candidate for Sencho. Hope that it doesn't change in the coming nights.
Oh, I'm certain that it will not. Oh, I will have that report to you by this coming Saturday morning. I will have it sent by courier. Therefore, I will endeavour to have it completed on Friday night. No time for Elysiums for Mr. Brodianus. And Ramsay begins packing away his things.
No, not really your affair, anyway. Fancy dress and such. You were never one for the pomposity of Elysiums, as I understand it.
No. I have more a reputation as a... And he shuffles some papers and puts them in his briefcase. A troubleshooter. And the last thing that leaves the table is his tablet, which he slides into the briefcase and he zips it closed. Well, my prince, if there will be nothing further, I will leave you. As you say, there is more than 1 hour in a night.
No rest for the wicked, Mr. Brodianus. Good evening.
We must be particularly evil men, my prince. Ramsay stands up and lifts his briefcase, and with another bow, he does his usual 2 steps back before turning and walking out of the room.
And there we will end the scene.